that working? Can you hear me? Hello. Should I press start? Yeah. Okay. Crikey. Thank you for coming. That's very kind of you. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you making some time on this beautiful Friday morning. I wanted to keep this very informal. You'll see I don't have speeches or even bullet points or even prompt cards. I just wanted to talk a bit about my background, about my thoughts about Q, distance from government. These are all analogous things. So I spent a long time there, 10 years at BBC News. I ran the BBC News and sport websites. I launched those, I ran those. I ran BBC Children's for 3 or 4 years, which was a truly wonderful job. Jeremy worked with me there. If anyone is familiar with CBeebies or CBBC, and one of the things I loved about that job was it made you think very, very hard about the public benefit, the consequence on the child. These were children from very young up to about 12, of spending time with either CBeebies for younger children or CBBC for older children. What were they getting as a consequence of spending some time on the website or watching one of our television programs? And it's an incredibly competitive landscape broadcasting to children. The UK is in fact the most competitive landscape in children's broadcasting in the world. 26 dedicated channels for children, most of which 24 hours a day. So how did we stand out? What were the consequences of spending time? How do we encourage a child to think differently about itself, or to be curious about the world, or want to try something different, whether it's to grow a plant or to paint a picture? How do we encourage a child to laugh out loud and to understand their role in society? And it forced us to think very clearly about the public benefits, the public responsibilities, if you like, of being a publicly funded broadcaster. And that is part of the culture I'd like to ensure is infused here. What is different and special about here? How do we justify our heritage and our public funding? How do we ensure that anyone who spends time at these gardens or at Wakehurst, how are they different when they leave? What is in their head? What questions? What curiosity? What inquiry about the world? Biodiversity, climate change, the role of plants. And I think that approach is something I'd very much like to bring with me here. My last job at the BBC was setting up, and I know this was controversial of course, setting up the BBC's new base in Salford, just outside Manchester. We moved about 2,000 people, or 2,000 roles rather. We moved all of sport, all of BBC Children's, all of Radio 5 Live, a lot of contracts, logistics, HR, etc., etc. I put up with years and years and years of people telling me it would never work. Breakfast news would fall off air, the Olympics would be destroyed, and actually it worked. And I think that's given me great confidence that you can do big, bold, and ambitious things, and if you do them properly and you plan them properly, they can land quite safely. But I decided I wanted to change from the BBC, and I thought very hard about what mattered to me, and the natural world, conservation, biology, was never far from my thoughts. My undergraduate degree is in fact in natural sciences. I even did a course in plant biochemistry. I'm very rusty, my knowledge is thin, but it's there. So I'm not scientifically illiterate, but I am rusty on that. But I've always been passionate about the natural world. That's why I applied all those years ago to be a trustee at Q. So that's my background. I wanted to say a few things about my initial impressions on my overall approach, and then some thoughts on priorities, and then we'll, lots of questions please. And the first point is self-evidently true, which is I am delighted and honoured and excited to be here. This is an extraordinary institution, extraordinary in so many ways. Its history is extraordinary in itself. Its current role and purpose is extraordinary. The diversity of what it does is amazing. I've spent at least half of this week walking around the gardens and departments here. I spent the last 2 days down at Wakehurst Place, both the seed bank, the gardens and the horticulturalists into the Loder Reserve and so on. It's amazing, it's inspiring. And I'm seeing it through fresh eyes, but I know you too will feel the same. So I am delighted and honoured and excited to be here. I also think a lot of change is needed. And some of this change will be controversial and some of it not. For example, on the latter, our systems, our IT systems, our HR systems are clearly very poor. They clearly need to be improved dramatically. Our relationship with DEFRA is clearly profoundly dysfunctional. I've been collecting a list of the top 10 examples that I intend to share with the trustees next week, and subsequently Marcus and I, the chairman, we have meetings with the relevant people at DEFRA. There's a new Minister of the Lords, there's a new Secretary of State, there's a new Chief Scientist, there's a new Chief Operating Officer at DEFRA. So we have a real opportunity to change our relationship with DEFRA, but clearly the status quo is profoundly wrong and has to change. Many of you have been giving me wonderful examples. Tony's tractor example is a good one. It's on the list, Tony, where I saw you a moment ago. That's on the list. Thank you. Send me other examples, because we have to change the nature of the relationship with DEFRA. Other change there may be more controversial. I don't know. I intend, as I think you know, to appoint a chief scientist for Kew. One individual who leads all of Kew's scientific work across the 3 major scientific departments, and including science policies and so on. And we should talk about that in a minute. But what I would ask, and this is the third point I wanted to make, is be open with me, be honest with me. I will make mistakes, I will get some things wrong. I'll do some things you disagree with. On the latter, I think we need to separate your understanding of the issue versus your agreement with it. And I would absolutely hope that you would at least understand what I'm doing, even if you didn't agree with it. And to that end, one of the things I intend to work very hard on is internal communications. And by that I mean a whole range of things. I mean walking around and talking to people. I mean meetings like this. I mean coming to tea rooms. I mean emails, blogs, Twitter, whatever, if that works. I don't mind. But I want to have a very open and honest dialogue with you. And I would ask you to be candid and open and honest with me in return. Email me, grab me, phone me, pop by, whatever. I will be accessible, I will listen, I will respond. But that's not the same as saying I will always agree with you or that you will always agree with me. But at minimum, I'd hope that you'd understand what I'm trying to do. Just to end, I'll talk a little bit about some of my thoughts on priorities. And I've already shared these with many of the people I've met at Wakehurst, the people I've met at Kew, the executive team, with the trades union reps actually as well. The headlines, in a sense, are very simple. As ever, the devil will be in the detail. I've mentioned a couple of things already. I'm determined to get the right senior team. The appointment of a chief scientist is probably the single most important thing I will do in the next 6 to 12 months. We need an individual who is outstanding, who is a highly credible scientist, credible with all of you, and credible with the external scientific community, someone who is a brilliant communicator, internally and externally, someone who can be a passionate advocate for Kew and Kew's science, and thirdly, someone who is a great leader and manager, someone who wants to build a strong team, who's interested in recruitment, in KPIs, in allocating budgets, in holding people to account, in running a tight ship, because Kew's science deserves all of those things. There are other changes to the senior team that clearly need to be made. Andy's post, the COO, obviously needs replacing. It may be exactly as is, there may be changes to those roles and responsibilities. But getting that senior team right is absolutely key. And to me, it's not just about the individuals and the remits, if you like. It's also about behaviour. I want that senior team and the whole of Kew to be collaborative, to be open, to be ambitious, to be entrepreneurial, and to be confident. Because I think so many good things can come from those. Big ideas, confident with each other, and confident externally. We have extraordinary stories to tell about this institution, externally and internally, and I'm not sure we're doing all we could do at the moment now. So the senior team. Another thing I've mentioned is the science strategy. I've mentioned this to many of you, and you may be surprised by this, or maybe not. I was a trustee for 6 years at Kew, and I never once, and I attended all the meetings bar 2 over 6 years, had an item on the agenda about Kew's science strategy. What is Kew's science strategy? What are we trying to do? What does success look like? What resources do we need? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Where are we really, really distinctive? Doing stuff that no one else in the world is doing or could do. That subject never came to the agenda of the board meetings. And I was very struck on my last meeting as a trustee. One of the eminent scientists, a fellow trustee of mine, said to me he too did not know what Kew's science strategy was. Now that has to change. We need to know what it is. The external world needs to know what it is, including, of course, DEFRA. So I want us to work hard, and I know Mark has already started some work on this, to say, right, what is our strategy for science? Do we have the resources to do it? Who is benefiting from this? Is it distinctive? Is it sustainable? We must do that. Another area I'll talk about is what I broadly call the visitor attraction. That might not be the right language, but what I mean is everything the visitor sees or engages with when they come, either to the sites or, of course, to our digital publishing. That encompasses a lot. Many of you will have read the horticulture report and Kew's response to it, and it's made a number of very interesting observations and comments. And I was speaking to the team in Wakehurst yesterday about the bits relating to Wakehurst. They're very positive about the report. They're already working hard to implement it. I've not yet had the equivalent conversations here. But the headline, in a sense, is very simple, which is I'm hugely ambitious for our horticulture. I know there are difficult issues around resources. It's my job to help them solve those. But we need to materially raise the quality and impact of horticulture and landscaping on this site. And I will do all I can to achieve that. Another area in terms of visitor attraction is, of course, the events. Do we have the right ideas? Are we being ambitious enough? Are we creating events on this site that are not... So I cantered through some headlines on priorities. I hope that seeded lots of questions. I hope there's lots of questions, because otherwise I'm going to look very embarrassed and uncomfortable here in stony silence. And I did mention at Wakehurst that one of the things I used to do at BBC meetings, if no one had any questions, was to pick on people at random. But I think that might be a little unfair. But anyway, I'm hoping there's lots of questions, so please fire away. So right at the back.